here. Today we're going to be making a video about how we use text within the Silhouette Cameo. So we're going to start with the basics, and then we may delve into a few more of the more fancy things. We'll see how long the video gets. So the first thing we're going to do is come over here to this menu over here on the left-hand side. And everything coming down on this left-hand side is your basic things that you're going to use all the time. On the right-hand side, it delves into more of your fancier choices that you can do. Now, please take note that I do have Business Edition, but I will stick to the basic things. So let's come down here. We're going to come down here to where the A is, and that is your text box. So we're going to open that up. We're going to click on the screen, and you'll see this blue line is now blinking on the screen. And here you can just start typing. So you notice the box is green and it has this bluish aqua color bar here at the end. This bar here at the end will determine how wide your box is going to be. And it doesn't care how many words you have, how many letters you have. It just shortens the box. So if you have a word and you make it shorter, it's going to put it up and down. If you spread it out, it's going to take your word and put it all in one big line. So let me make this a sentence. Let's see. The dog sat. We'll go back to the typing days. So right here, let me move this box. So when I click on it here, you'll see that it becomes a black box like you're more familiar with just a regular text box. And this helps you move it around the screen. And just like any other text box, if you're using Word or any other word processor, you can just grab the corner and shrink it and change the size. And you can also change the size by going up here. If you want your font to be let's say you wanted it 20, you could change it that way too. But let's stick with one thing at a time. So we have the dog sat. So I'm going to double click and my green box comes back. And you'll see that my little aqua bar is way over here. So everything's on one line. So as I bring it closer, still one line, and now each word it will put on a separate line because I made it shorter. If I keep getting shorter, that's as short as it will let it go. So you don't have to hit enter in between words if you want to put them on different lines. You can make this box the size you want it to be, and the program will automatically do it for you. All right, so now we have our sentence, and we want to center it. So we're going to come up here to the top, and this should be familiar if you're using other word processing programs. So we're going to come to the second one, which is going to justify in the center. So that will center it. The next one over will justify it to the right-hand side. And the one here in the middle, let's see what it does with this cursive writing. It will justify it fully, which kind of spreads it out a little bit. And that is more effective if you have a lot of text. Then it kind of spreads it out a little bit and makes it all one big square. So most of the time, I'm justifying it to the center if I have more than one line. Now I will say, double click again. So we're going to come back to our green box, and this is going to tell us how long our box is going to be. If you drag this out, it keeps justifying it to the center. It'll keep centering it for you. So now I'm going to click on it once. And you'll see here, it now gives you the dimensions of the box. So it says this box is 0.345 by 3.312. Now what you can do here is you can pull it down to stretch it out. If let's say you wanted a box that was 1 inch and you wanted it to be, let's say, 3 inches, you could stretch it out that way. And it will adjust it up here where your font size is. It keeps track of it for you. Now, if you notice, let's make this bigger so we can see it. So this font here has a black outline and then blue. So the blue up here is the fill color. So I'm going to change this to black. So now it's a black letter with a fill color. Black fill. So the one thing you need to know is there are two types of fonts when you're working with a Cameo. There are sketch ones that your pen will write out, and then the other ones, it's going to do an outline. Even if you say to fill it in, it's going to do an outline. The way to have it print out solid is to use your printer. So if you're not using a sketch font, which you can search for sketch, and we'll get to that in a minute. But for most fonts, especially ones that you're using that are from your computer, you're going to want to fill it in with whatever color you want it to print it on your computer, and then cut out the shape you're looking for. Because what's going to happen is, let's go over to send. Let's go cut by line. You can see here, let me enlarge this so we can see it a little better. It's only going to cut out this black line, and it's going to leave this blank. So let's go back to design, and let's pick, actually no, let's go back to send. And let's go over here to action, and let's say we want to sketch it. So see now, you can see the black is on the outline. That's what it's going, because the gray here is shaded out. That's grayed out, so it's not going to do anything with that. All it's going to sketch is this outline. Now, if you wanted it to sketch something and then color in the letters, that's totally fine. That's something you can do based on the script you're using. But for something like this, you're going to end up with the outline, and then there's going to be spaces here. And I just want to make sure you understand that. So if we go to cut, see, the lines look the same, but you have to make sure you know what you're doing over here in the action bar, because it says cut. So you can see the black line is still highlighted. The color on the inside is still grayed out. So it's only going to cut around the outside, which if you're cutting out letters, that's fine, because that's what you're generally going to be doing. Scoring, if you want to, for some reason, score your letters, it's going to do the same thing. The gray is still grayed out. It's only going to go around the outside. Stipple would do the same thing. So let's go find one that can be sketched. So I'm going to come over here to library. I'm going to come down here to fonts. And generally the ones that you're going to be able to actually sketch are going to be ones that you have bought from Silhouette, because that has the programming in it for it to sketch it, and it's just a fact. The other ones, they're just going to do the outlines of the letters. So let's pick Santa's Candy. And see, it changed the dog sat to Santa's Candy automatically. And it looks a little stretched out. So let's go to our box. And let's put that back to the way it should be so we can actually read it. And so now, let me make this bigger. Let's see. Sometimes I get carried away. So let's make our font a little bigger. Let me highlight it. Highlight the font, and it will tell you how big it is. Let's make it a little larger so we can see it. You can see here, this is a skinny font that now will be sketched. When we come out here, hit send. Our action is going to be sketch. And now you can see, you just see the one solid line. So that means when you put your pen in, it is indeed going to sketch this. There's nothing grayed out. So there's not going to be anything in the middle that's not going to be sketched. Because remember before when we had the T, if we went across the top of the T, there was an area over here that was grayed out. So that's going to be something that's not going to be colored in. So when you have a sketch font, this is all going to be, it's just going to draw a straight line, and that's what you're going to get. All right, so let's go back over to design. All right, so let's erase this and let's go through this one more time. So we're going to click A for text box. Click over here. It automatically puts it in the box where you can change the size. So let's type in a girl sat on the bench. Just so we get a whole sentence here. Now it went back to the font that I was originally using. So to change the font, you can do a couple things. You can do this, just highlight the gray box, and you can pick the font, and it will change it. Now this is a very chunky one. And also it will change it if you have the green box. I believe you're going to want, the green box, you're going to want to highlight the letters before you change it. Now your thought may be, well, why does it do that? Because you can do this. So you have the green box, and you only want to change the font of one word in your sentence. So now I can come here, and I'll just pick one. And it will change just the one word in your sentence without having to, line it all up, cut and paste, and do all that other nonsense. It will let you do that. And then if you have the black box around here, and you were to pick a font, it's going to change the whole thing. So just know that if you have it, double click where you have the green box with the turquoise on the end, you can change each individual word to a different font if you want to. All right, so now I'm going to take my little turquoise bar here on the end, and I'm going to scoot it over so we can see again that that's going to change the way that looks. And it's going to make it more of a square now. Now I'm going to come up here to justify, and I'm going to justify it in the middle, and it automatically brings it all here in the middle. Now if we have the regular just text box and we justify it, it will also change it there too. The program is smart enough that it will do it in both places. All right, so let's look at this big chunky font. If we go over to send, let's look at what it's going to do. So it still has sketch checked here from the last time we were here. So notice the black is very dark, and we can see that. But the aqua that we had underneath here, this blue color, is kind of faded out. That means it's not going to do anything with that. So all this is going to do is sketch the black line, and then you could color it in. I mean, that's fine, or it could be letters that are just the outside sketch. It just depends on what you want to do. But if we go to cut, you'll see it looks the same, but now it's going to cut out the letters in whatever color paper you put in there. Now what you can do, you're like, well, Karen, I really want to have this in a color, and that's what I want to do. So let's do that now. So let's take this from the beginning. So we have our letters. Wait, I don't have to highlight that. We're going to put it in the middle. We're going to pick a different font. Oh, and up here, it will show any font that you have on your computer. It will show in the list. This is every font available to you. Anything you've downloaded, anything that you have in another program. So if you have like Word or something like that, all the fonts that are in Word will show up here. So if you have a favorite font there, you can use that. So we'll pick Alpha Wood here, just for something fun. And let's get rid of that. So now this looks like this. So now, if we were to go over to send and leave this as cut, it's just going to try and cut all these tiny little pieces, and it's just going to be a mess. So let's come back over here, and we're going to put a box around this. So let's pick, I don't know, we can pick a circle. Doesn't really matter. Something that's going to be big enough. I am going to take this circle, come up here in the text box, and I'm going to make it clear. And clear or transparent is this one over here, which has like the little, I don't know, it's like a sideways box. I don't know how else to describe it. So now I have a clear box. But notice these are the same color. So the machine is going to do the same thing with it. It's going to try to draw them or cut them. So you want to make sure that if you have a text and you're putting a shape around it, you want this to be a different color. And I tend to make anything I want to print out black, and then anything I want to cut out, I make red. And it just makes it easy for me to keep track of what I'm looking at. So now I'm going to right click and drag a big square around both things to where now you can see everything's highlighted here. The circle's highlighted and my little text box is highlighted. I'm going to join it together. I'm going to group it. So now that it's grouped, I can move it around the screen. So now when I go over to send, it's now giving me two choices. What do I want to do with the black? Well, the black, I would sketch that. You could sketch it. Or you can tell it you don't want to do anything with it. Because in a text like that, I would probably just print it out on my computer and then have the machine cut it. So the red, I'm going to tell it I want it to cut. So now this would cut the circle after this was all printed. So let's see. So over here, so let's now go over here to the other text box. So over here, if you come down here, there's a lot of other options over here. And when you get to this one, the A with the line next to it, this opens up your text style panel. Now this does a lot of different things and it gives you a lot of choices. So on the first tab, which is your text style, is something that is in the basic edition. The way the glyphs work is different because I have business edition, so we're not going to mess with that for right now. I will show you, what it does in case you do want business edition, but we won't mess with that right now. All right, so we're going to come over here. I'm going to ungroup this so I can work just with the text. So now we have a lot of choices over here. This box will let you change your font up here, just like the other box did. It'll let you change the size of your font over here. But then down here, it gives you more choices. So let's come all the way down to character spacing down here. So first thing you'll see is line spacing. So you can, right now, and every font is going to be slightly different. So even if you set it to the way you want it, if you change your font, it's going to change the spacing. That's just the way each font is set up. And you have to space it for each individual font. So line spacing is at 100%. By default, it's always going to be there. So we can start decreasing the line spacing, and it brings it up closer together. Now this is nice if you want to do something where you want to cut something out as one big piece and you want it touching, so that's always good. If you only have so much space on your project and you want to get all your wording in, you're going to want to put the words closer together. And you can also, in the next line, character spacing. You can spread out your characters if you want. If you're like, well, that font looks a little mushed, you can spread it out. If you're like, those letters are too far apart for what I'm trying to do, you can mush them together. So let's put that back at 100. Actually, I'm going to leave it at 110. All right, so now we have our spacing the way we want it. We like our font. We like how the actual lines are spaced out and the letters. Then now I'm going to right click again. I'm going to drag a box over everything I have here. I'm going to come up here to this little thing that looks like a bull's, the crosshairs up here, and I'm going to center it. And then I'm going to group it together. So now I have this. So now what's going to happen is I could print this on my printer. A girl sat on the bench, and then it will cut this circle around it. So what I want to do is I'm going to come up here to page. And I'm going to come over here to the registration marks. I'm going to turn on the registration marks. Now this tells you with your printer This is the space you can print on your printer, and then the machine will be able to cut it out. So this is getting kind of close to the edge, and we probably don't need something that is, 7 inches across. So let's go ahead and shrink this up. So I'm going to shrink it down. Now you also can do it up here, because now that you've grouped it together as a text box, you also have numbers up here. So if you know I want this to be 4 inches by 3 inches, it will automatically do it, and then you're all set. And then this little lock over here, you can lock it, and then it will keep that aspect ratio. You can still make it bigger and smaller, but both numbers are going to change at the same time. Because notice this says 3.643, and this says 2.732. So if I change this back to 4, it's going to change the other number back to 3 automatically, if this is locked. So if you're ever trying to change something, you can't figure out why it's not adjusting the way you want it to, make sure it's either locked or unlocked, depending on what it is you're trying to do. All right, so now we have this, and we have that. So we're going to leave that there. So now I'm going to duplicate this and do something different with it. So I'm going to bring this down here. I'm going to ungroup it. So now I have the text again. So I'm going to change the text to a different text. Let's make it something scripty. Okay, so you can see here, this now changed. And see, yeah, that's too bunched up. So let's come over here to the text. Now let's go back to line spacing. And let's space that out a little bit more, because that's too bunched up. So that's probably good. Now we can see it. So now it's blue, and it has a black line around the outside. Now, the black line is not going to print, because if you look up here where it says points, anything that is 0, the machine thinks is a cut line, regardless if you say to cut, not cut. Anything that's a 0, because it's nothing, you have to give it a thickness for it to actually show up. So let's take this and let's make this a thicker line. Let's see. We'll go with 1.25. That looks pretty good. And let's change our font on the inside to a different color. So we'll come over here to the color box. Let's make that yellow. And so that makes your fill color yellow. So this square over here is what color your line's going to be. So let's make that a different color. Let's make that red. Why not? Okay, so now we have a yellow font with a red outline. And this, again, you can have your printer print this out. So let's get rid of the circle for this one. So now let's take this one and let's come over here to the offset, which is over here. We're going to hit offset. Now you can see it puts the offset on here, and we're going to hit apply. All right, so what does that do? That now gives us our letters here, and it gives us an offset here. Oh, but wait, you know what? I have made a mistake. We don't want that to be red, because when we cut it out, it's going to try and cut that out. So let's make that purple. Or, let's see, purple, or make it orange. All right. So we're going to keep our cut lines red. So now we have yellow letters with an orange outline with this red border around it. Now this border, we need to make sure is 0, so it knows to cut that out. So now I can take this, I can line it back up again in the center. Let's adjust that a little bit. Sometimes because of the spacing under the fonts that is there, and sometimes it depends on the font designer, whoever made the font. If they put extra space underneath, it throws it off a little bit. So then you just line it up yourself. But I will say, if you use the fonts from Silhouette, if you buy any of those, you don't have those problems. So we're going to line that up. We're going to put this together. So now this moves around the screen together. So let's look at send now. What do we have? So we have the black. We don't want the machine to do anything with the black because we're going to print that out. So it's going to cut this red square. It's going to cut this red line here. And we also want to turn the orange off because we don't want it to cut the orange. Because if we left this checked, it would try to cut out each individual letter, and that's not what we want it to do. And you can see the difference. So look at a girl sat on the bench. And I'm going to check the box. See how now that orange is very bright? And when you turn it off, it becomes washed out. All right, so now this is like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here. And I am going to come up here to where it says, where my little printer symbol is. And I am going to print this out. I'm going to check my preferences to make sure I'm in portrait, not landscape. And I'm going to hit print. And I have an Epson printer. So every printer is going to be a little different. All right. So I have my computer printed out. And let's look at this here. So a girl sat on the bench. This had the black outline, but you see we still have the blue over here. So it filled it in blue. And then we have a girl sat on the bench, which we have yellow lettering with red. And then it's going to cut it around here. So I'm going to turn this around so you can look at see what happened. Let's see. Let's put it over here. So first let's look at the girl sat on the bench. So because we had the blue in there, it printed it out in blue. And then a girl sat on the bench on the bottom is the yellow with the orange around it. But notice none of the red printed because the red lines size was 0. So that only sees it as a cut line. So now we're going to go ahead and send this over to the machine. So now let's double check what it's going to do. It's going to cut the red circle and it's going to cut this line around here. So let's put it in the machine. And let's hit send. And there it goes. So while it's cutting, a couple things I'll say in on that. If you have trouble with your registration marks, a couple things you can do is you can make them thicker and wider. Sometimes that helps if your room doesn't have good lighting. And then you can also manually set it, and you just follow the directions for that. When you hit manual, the directions pop up and tell you what to do. All right, so this is done. So let's see what we have here. All right, so the girl sat on the bench on top should be the letters cut in a circle. Let's see. That's what we have. And the one on the bottom, a girl sat on the bench, should have cut out a shape around here because we used the offset. Yeah, so that's it. So I hope this helps you. And if you have other questions, please let me know. And I will try to show you some other things that you can do on here. And I will have some other videos about some of the other buttons as the weeks come along. But I hope this helps, and get those machines out and use them because I hate the thought of them all sitting on the shelf and collecting dust. And until next time, stay crafty.